know what I'm talking about, but the Elder Scrolls Legends card game, which just came out. We've all been playing it for about a week, and this podcast is, of course, brought to you by BetweenTheLanes.net. I'm CVH, I run Between the Lanes, and I'm joined by my two distinguished guests for episode 1. We have EarthP0w3R and CoreyMilhouse, whom you can both see on the screen. And I guess before we jump into the actual topics, which should be about an hour of general Elder Scrolls Legends goodness, let's do some introductions. I'm going to toss it over to EarthP0w3R. Who are you?
What's going on, guys? My name is CarlMilhouse. I go by EarthP0w3R on most social medias. Longtime card player, longtime gamer. Really into TS Legends, and excited to see where it goes.
All right, nice. Now down to CoreyMilhouse.
Hi everyone, CoreyMilhouse here. Also a pretty big gamer as far as pretty much everything goes. It's been a lot of Smash as of recently, coming back more to card games. I have background in Magic, Pokemon cards, basically everything except for Yu-Gi-Oh! So Kaijudo, Force of Will, done a little bit of everything, and this game being mixed into one of pretty much all of those has been a lot of fun so far.
Yep, and as I mentioned, I'm CVH. I run BetweenTheLanes.net for the content for the Elder Scrolls Legends, because I'm just really into the game, to be honest. I'm pretty stoked to talk about it for about an hour with you guys. I've been streaming it a lot recently, and like Carl, I have a lot of background in Kaijudo specifically, and after that was a lot of Hearthstone. So between the three of us, we've really played basically every, you could say, Tier 1 or Tier 2 game that's been released probably in the last decade, to be honest. You know, Carl and I played Yu-Gi-Oh!, Corey's really into Magic, Carl played Pokemon, I played Hearthstone, you know, it's a bunch of stuff. So, with that being said, there's a lot of games. We're just going to jump right into the first discussion topic I had. Like we mentioned, there's a lot of games coming out that really want to compete with these Tier 1 games, like Magic and Hearthstone, specifically now that Hearthstone was seeing such success on the online world. We have games like Duelist and Faeria coming out that are trying to take advantage of that. Games like Force of Will and Kaijudo coming out that are trying to, you know, build from Magic and Pokemon and stuff like that. Between the Lanes obviously has a lot of, why do I keep saying Between the Lanes because it's on the screen? The Elder Scrolls Legends by Bethesda and Direwolf Digital obviously shares a lot of similarities with games like Magic and Hearthstone, but it does have some pretty unique differences that, you know, people have caught on to. And my initial question, which I think is probably the question on everyone's mind in some way or the other, is, like, citing specific examples, how and, like, is this game doing enough to really break the mold in a way that it can be truly successful in such a saturated market, and how is it doing this? Like, can it get there? Because I get asked this a lot of times in my stream. Like, I've only been streaming this game for, like, a week or so now, but every single day you got someone in the chat saying, CVH, do you think this can get as big as Hearthstone, or even bigger than Hearthstone? You know, given it enough time, obviously. So what do we think? Yeah.
I'll take lead on that for a minute. Like, I just realized it when you brought up the other online games that are trying to, like, break into the mold that, you know, Hearthstone sort of set. Like, they set a standard for online gaming. I mean, they've got, I'm gonna guess, and I'm probably gonna be wrong, but it's like millions and millions of individual accounts.
You're right.
And that's gonna be really hard to top. For most games, you know, that's like the peak. Like, Hearthstone is maxed that because they were kind of the first on the scene, kind of like what Magic did, you know, with card gaming. But, like, when you talked about Duelist, and I don't know what the other one is, but I guess Fairy, you know, I think they're doing too much. Whereas now you've got TS Legends, and I think what they're doing differently, it's super, super simple. Like, for me, it was very easy to get into, because I've already got background in Hearthstone, and if they're trying to pull Hearthstone players, their engine looks almost the exact same. And it's, you know, card game based instead of, you know, with little 3D creatures, you know, on the boards, like what I saw with Duelist. And I like what TS Legends is doing. It kept it simple, and, you know, the gameplay is you know, they've got some unique parts that, you know, encompass a lot of other games that I played that I like. So
I agree. I have seen some flack on the forums and on Reddit especially, because you always see the flack on Reddit, to be perfectly honest, that, you know, maybe it's copying a bit too much from Hearthstone, but I agree. Having tried both Duelist and Faeria, you know, they share similarities, but they go way out there as far as, you know, pushing the boundaries of what a card game really does. And I like that TS Legends, you know, sort of brings it back to basics while just really focusing on trying to perfect the basics, is the vibe I get from it. So what do you think, Corey? You have a lot of background in Magic. And that's the
Yeah,
other
and
game that this is compared to a lot. So what do you think?
and even before then, I mean, for a game to be successful, you need some promotion, some advertising. This may be a little bit of a joke for Christian and Carl, but also it's the truth. And I went to PAX this a couple months ago, and here I am with my Elder Scrolls Legends shirt. You know, they were out there and demoing the game and getting people to check it out. Bethesda just does such a great job. I have so many friends that are so enthralled by Skyrim and Fallout and all these other games that just have such a great story with it. And I think that was something right when I fired up Legends to me, the story right off the bat was better than anything I had ever seen in Hearthstone it was a lot more goofy and playful. And this one's a bit more, that story, I don't know if you all skipped right through it or watched it, but it was a lot of fun and it kind of got me sucked right in from the beginning. So I think they do a really good job of showing you what you can do in this game and how it is a little bit different. I think the lanes thing is to me is the breakthrough and makes it completely different because there's just so much more depth there now, which any other game just simply does not have.
Yeah, I can't confirm this, but since we were talking, like we mentioned the fact that like the runes come from sort of the Duel Masters and Kaijudo shield system. I did hear somewhere someone said that the lane system was used in a way in the Neopets card game. I can't confirm or deny this.
Nope.
Sure, I mean this is not. Yeah, it's not game breaking. And no one's ever thought of it ever. But this will be the most successful use of it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and to go back to what you were saying about the story too, that was a big thing. I wrote it in an article on BetweenTheLanes.net for those of you who are frequenting the site. But the story, like for me, I've never played Skyrim. I've never played Elder Scrolls. And, like you said with Bethesda's marketing, TS Legends was very compelling to me. Like, it was just, it's a card game. I'm a card player. It's a very simple engine. It's one that I'm used to because of Hearthstone. And, jumping right in, the story was, very vibrant. It was very, there was a deepness to it that I liked a lot. So, just actually following through and getting to know Tyr and, being the hero that, they talking about, being the legend, as it were. It was really cool to kind of be a part of that, and it captured me, and it did a very good job of kind of introducing the game without being repetitive or, like you said, goofy or anything like that.
Yeah, no spoilers, but there's kind of you pick your own adventure, like those Goosebumps books, right?
Yeah,
you're given these options to do one of these or the other, so you kind of get to right off the bat. It's not you're just going through this linear story. You get to choose some of the actions in the middle of it, and I'm like, this is not what I was expecting out of a card game, but this is pretty great. It's just the bonus right on top of it, and the entire time you're just collecting a ton of cards for all these decks that you can just jump right into with.
And it just leaves a lot to add on. They've got so much room to just kind of keep going with it, which is really cool. So
I like the Goosebumps analogy there, because I used to be an avid reader of that series. Yeah. If you want the tier card upgrade, turn to page 34.
And you see that you're dead on that, so you go back and actually I didn't make that
No,
decision.
dead on board.
Oh, we did the other thing. I forgot. Sorry.
Give me the other one, which I guess you can't really do in the story. But yeah, I do agree. Nope. It does seem to, at least the story aspect of it, it takes itself more seriously. And honestly, for all the World of Warcraft lore that Hearthstone pulls from, there's not really anything that resembles a story mode in that game. You have the adventures, but there's not a story there. You're just fighting a bunch of AIs without really knowing who or what they are, which
you don't know why, right? You just know you're fighting them.
Yeah, and I don't really play card games for the stories, so I could kind of take or leave it, but I do appreciate the work that goes into it and that it's taking itself more seriously. But do we think that this game has sort of found the sweet spot of what competitive gamers are looking for, but also still accessible enough to the newer crowd?
I think that's yet to be seen. It's still newish. They just opened the beta less than a week ago.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've already got just to kind of probably jump ahead to what we're going to talk about a little later, but there's only 80 or so legend players currently out of their 12 rank system or whatever. So it doesn't seem like so many people have grasped it. And I don't know about you, but just for me playing on the ladder, I play a lot of the same people after 3 or 4 games. I'm starting to recognize the names that I'm playing.
Yeah, me
so
too.
I'm wondering, now that it's out there, now that they were promoting it back at PAX 3-4 months ago. They've been promoting it because it's just Bethesda. Everybody knows Skyrim, either in passing or just by regular pop culture. But it makes me wonder what they're gonna do now that the game's in open beta, what they're gonna do to start pulling those players in.
Yeah, and that's really the answer I tend to give a lot of my viewers when they ask, is that the game itself seems fantastic to me, but a lot of it really does just depend on the marketing, because you could...
Yeah.
The analogy I use is like, there's a killer restaurant down the street, but, I mean, just because they serve quality food at an affordable price, they're probably not going to get more traffic than the McDonald's down the block, right? Because, that you just know about McDonald's, and you might not know about the killer restaurant. But, this is also a huge company. It doesn't really compare to, like, Duelists or Faria's company. Like, this is a company who really can advertise it. They have tons of Facebook likes already. So I'm definitely optimistic, whereas some people might be a little bit pessimistic about it. I'm usually pessimistic about most things. I'm pretty optimistic about it.
And I don't know, Corey, did you play Hearthstone when it first came out, like, initially?
Yeah, the initial beta, my brother was right there from the get-go. I remember playing a couple of games with him.
How big was it in the beginning? Like, is Legends comparing to that right now, would you say?
It's really tough to say, because Hearthstone was sort of the first of its kind. It was one of those things where you were just like, okay, it's all completely online. There's no trading. The closest thing we had to that was just, Magic Online or the Yu-Gi-Oh, the Play Network thing. There were a few things that were like that, but Hearthstone was really the first just completely digital card game. So it had an interesting beginning. If this was the first, if this became before Hearthstone, I would say that at least my opinion is Hearthstone wouldn't be able to compete, but someone had to pave the way, and I think that Legends may end up being the beneficiary of that, seeing how they were successful, how they were unsuccessful, and they're gonna, I hope and I believe, and it looks like they've done so far, is take what they've learned from Hearthstone and be able to try to do it themselves. But as far as the size, it's tough to say. Pokemon Go is a very, very popular game right now.
Yeah.
It is starting to teeter off, but again, you can't play that when it's 9 o'clock, on a Sunday night, and you just want to be sitting around hanging out. Maybe that's when you start playing Legends. So my whole thing is, if you want this game to grow, I mean, I would just go out and tell all your friends about it. If you've got a friend who's never even played card games but loves Skyrim, loves Fallout, anything like that, or just likes Bethesda in general, it's open beta now. It's completely free, so I think they have all of the right tools necessary to be successful. It's just going to be about a matter of following through.
So since we basically agreed that it's mostly on the company and also the players, especially the more well-known players, to go out there and promote and really talk up the game. But we've definitely come to the conclusion that it's a great game from a player standpoint. I wasn't planning on asking this, but I'm just going to ask it. What do you guys like the most about the game?
I mean, for me, like, Duel Masters and Kaijudo are like, my I don't know. It's weird to say. I don't know what word I can use, but I love those games a lot. Like, those games mean a lot to me. It's my entire childhood. Like, even growing up with you, Christian, it was just, it was always, that was our thing. That's what brought us together. I've got some of my best friendships because of Duel Masters and, because of Kaijudo. That's the whole reason Corey's in this call. And what I really like about TS Legends,
valid opinions.
Well, I mean, it really is. Like, if it hadn't,
I know what you meant, Carl.
Yeah, we wouldn't have known Corey. It is what it is. But and we love him. But I just, what I like about TS Legends is that they take some of my favorite aspects from those games, and it kind of feels like I'm playing them again. The 2-lane system is really, really cool. I think there's still a lot to explore with that. But the rune system, there's the way I don't get mana screwed anymore, like, it's really cool. So it's just like it's taking the best parts of those card games that I grew up with, and now I get to play it in my underwear. It like Corey said, at 9 o'clock at night when I'm not doing anything else. So it's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think just all the different mechanics that are, some of them they're relatively new, but just how they're kind of all mixed together. I think overall for me, the number of different decks that you can be building right now, there's so much synergy just like automatically in there for all of these cards. So it's not like these decks build themselves, because there's so many different ways that you can go. I mean, you can take an endurance-based deck, and you can probably build something similar with each other different color. There's just, I've seen maybe 5 or 6 decks for the most part, kind of over and over and over, but they all even have different spins or twists on them. Is the thing is, even though we have such a small card pool to start, there's just so many different possibilities. There's still probably decks out there people haven't even thought of yet. As people are getting more and more cards, it just seems like the sky is the limit right now.
Yeah, it's a very compelling first set. When you look at other games' first sets, they're generally much less dynamic. Like, the decks, there might be a good amount of different decks, but they don't they don't have the depth that the decks have now. Like, of course, you have mid-range, you have control, they exist, but there's, like, I think it's a lot of it is due to the 50 card limit, or the 50 card minimum, actually. There's a lot of room, which means you have to really, like, look for, I don't know, ways to like maximize the space, and sometimes it actually seems tight when you're like discovering all these synergies and really thinking about the meta. It's a lot of options that they have given us so far.
And really, the variance in this game, they did a great job on it. Carl and Christian and I played a game, Kaijudo, where there were shield blasts, and there was a lot of field bad moments there. The RNG in Hearthstone can be pretty aggravating at times just because it is so goofy. Like Knife Juggler, he's just got these goofy noises, and he's just going out there and he's hitting everything perfect on you, and you just tilt off the face of the earth. Prophecies are a thing where you're like, if you hit a prophecy, you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have attacked right there. Maybe that wasn't the best idea. You start to actually learn from it.
Yeah,
instead.
Or attack differently. There's so many different ways you can play around them, right?
Yeah. The different variants in this game feels much better. It feels more tactical than it feels like my opponent getting lucky or unlucky, which I think is huge for a game like this. So you definitely have your games where you hit 5 prophecies and maybe you win or maybe you lose from it. I mean, I actually had a game where I hit 0 prophecies, my opponent hit 4, and I still won the game. So it's a fun mechanic, that fun comeback mechanic, and the variance overall it's been manageable, which is for me enjoyable and sort of what I'm looking for. Is like, let's have some variance so we're not playing chess. But let's have it be in a way where maybe we can play around it, or we can think about it in different ways, and it's not just going to be a bunch of coin flips over and over and over.
Yeah, what you really want in variance when you're designing a card game, and I can't really speak for card developers because I'm not one, but what I would be looking for is tangible variance. Like, you want variance that it's fun and surprising, and of course it creates games that are all different and unique, because you don't want someone to play 10 games on the ladder and 4 of them just felt the exact same, because then they're going to realize they could be doing something more productive with their time. But you want variants that, like, if you really want to focus on competition, if a player really wants to do that, they can, like, sit there, they can look at the cards and the possibilities, and reasonably go through them in their mind and figure out maybe not the way to guarantee themselves that it's not going to affect them negatively, but at least, like, find out what gives them the best possible chance. Like, I can look at Brutal Ashlander, and it could be upsetting on turn 2 if I played a 2-drop, right? But, like, there's a few
I love
different...
that card.
I know, but there's, like, a few different outcomes, and I can see them. I can understand them all. Whereas there's nothing that goes variance into variance. Like, Bottle of Wishes was a variant prophecy card, basically, in Kaijudo. It had variance because it was a prophecy, and then it just flips something random out of the deck, which might in turn have variance. Yogg Saron falls in this category, and Hearthstone, it's just so much variance that it's literally impossible to play around everything. All you can possibly tell yourself is that maybe it'll happen to me. That's where the reasoning is. That's all you can plan for. Like, maybe it'll happen. It's like if a hurricane was coming, and you have no idea how to prepare for it, you just know that it might hit you. But you have no idea if it's like a hurricane or a firestorm or like insane hail. Like, what do? You can't reasonably prepare for all the possibilities.
I love these analogies, by the way.
Yeah, you might just die.
Crazy weather down there, man. It just snows up in Boston. Yeah. It just snows.
Yeah, what if it was like either snow or an earthquake? You can only prepare for one, Corey. Just
there you go.
Guess.
I kind of like that.
Good luck. All right. So, we did mention the ladder, and Carl, you brought up the point that there's, like, not few people playing, but, obviously it's still in the process of growing. I know a lot of people don't even realize it's an open beta. Just in case you guys are listening to this, guys, it's an open beta now. You can play it. So go download it if you have I don't think it works on Mac, but that's
literally do it tonight. Yeah.
Do it tonight. Do it right now. Yeah. But so basically on the topic of the ladder, I don't know how you guys are doing. I guess we can go through that. I'm currently at Legend. I've been hovering around top 30 all day. I've recently ended all 3 streams at 7. I know you guys have been actively grinding towards Legend, which you can get into in a second. But what do we think of the ladder system? For those of you who don't know, it only has 12 ranks as opposed to Hearthstone's 20 to 25, depending on where you go. The resets at the beginning of the month are much less extreme. I was 8 last month, and I was reset to 9. Whereas in Hearthstone, I just would have been down to the bottom, right? And besides that, you also can't drop ranks. You can lose at a rank, like say I'm rank 3 and I lose at the bottom of rank 3. You go into the Serpent, which is basically like a 2-star thing, where like, alright, I'm rank 3. I lost into the Serpent. I can lose one more. Then after that, I just can't lose a rank.
Well, what you mean by losing to the Serpent, instead of being at like 3 with 0 stars, when he loses a game, he doesn't lose rank 3. He just falls into a deeper like star pit.
You kind of go to this little purgatory place where it's like you're not really didn't fall a rank. You're also still not in the current rank. You're just in this spot where you got to kind of prove yourself again to be able to get back into the rank.
Yeah,
But it
but
still
you
lists
can't-
you
I
as
love a
rank
ton.
3.
Right,
Yeah.
but you can't go
I'm-
any further past 2 stars in the pit. So
Yeah, if you lose
I
in the
know
pit
exactly
multiple
the
times,
reason
just
why
stand
I
there.
stopped playing Hearthstone. It was the day that I was 1 star away from Legend, and I somehow managed to lose a number of games of being on tilt all the way down to rank 8.
I remember you
Uh,
telling me about that. I didn't even believe it when I heard it.
Yeah,
just
it was
insane.
just because that's the thing is sometimes you just get in a rut or you start losing some games and you don't want to feel like you're being punished for overall having a good season. Like overall, I had an amazing season and just had kind of a crappy end to it. I went a little bit on tilt and then eventually just didn't care, went all the way down. But the fact that it's more about progress, and maybe I try to be a bit more of a positive person, but players like us, I'm not expecting everyone to be able to jump on in a day and go from rank 12 to rank 4 or something like that. But I mean, that's what I did too. But there was a lot to learn along the way too. There aren't win streak bonuses, which is another thing to kind of think into. So you only ever get one, except for that bonus round. They'll throw it to you every once in a while.
Yeah, it's just like a random. It's like a
Yeah.
it just happens randomly. Sometimes you'll see bonus round, and if you win the bonus round, you will gain 1 extra star. So that's
Yep.
about it.
It seems like it is actually more about improving yourself as a player, more so than the Hearthstone ranking system is. So I have to give a thumbs up to the way that they have been doing it. They give you cards along the way too. So it's Master Thief or Thief Warrior, and there's one other one where basically you get a card every month for going through and hitting each of all of those ranks. I don't. Is it Christian? Did they give it to it at the end or once they hit it? 'Cause I know you got to Legend.
I have no idea.
he didn't make it last month. He
Gotcha.
just
So it's the
later,
end
yeah.
of the month then. That's what I
Oh
thought.
yeah. You get end of season rewards the same as
Yeah.
you would in other games.
But I like the rank system. Like to draft off Corey a little bit. Like I like it in a way that it makes it kind of easier for me to jump in and get there. And like all things considered, like I mentioned it earlier, there aren't a lot of people playing right now. At least competitively, I don't think. Because like at rank 2, I played some guy like at 1 star. I won 2 games later, and then I played him again. And like, I see the same names like over the course of a similar night. Whereas Hearthstone, it's rare unless you make it to the very top of the ladder, and you're queuing up like right after you win or lose the game.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm interested to see if they change it later on in the future. As more players get into it, they try to make it a little bit more challenging. Because at this point, like I'm not feeling challenged. Like my win rate on Legends right now is something ungodly, like 95%. Like I've only dropped 5 or 6 games on the ladder out of the I think almost 40 that I played to go from 12 to 2. So
I mean, I
it's
have
just
to imagine a lot of that's due to like people just not having the cards yet.
right, and of course, like it's still very early in the game, but I'm interested to see if they change that engine at all, because it's to me personally, it's not very challenging. As a longtime card player, like I like to think that I can think outside of the box and kind of work my way out of situations, and I'm still seeing people on the ladder, even at like rank 1 and 2, just kind of being reckless with their attacks. Not really thinking their moves through, or just playing things out of order. Like it's very loose right now. So I'm
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, as of right now, like, who can really say they're playing competitively? Like, I play a lot, but
Right,
since
but
there's
playing
no
optimally,
yeah, that makes sense. Playing how you would if it was an actual competitive sanctioned match or whatever. I think a lot of it is, like, I don't really mind that it's not super hard to get to Legend, because if they do something similar to what Hearthstone does with the, if something with the ladder relates to competitive play, either qualifications for tournaments or something like that, it would be like Legend finishes obviously is what they would do, and a lot of it is just tedious. Like the players who are going to get to Legend in Hearthstone are still going to get to Hearthstone Legend. They're not going to miss a month if they are doing it consistently for a purpose. So resetting them to rank 16 has often been like, all right, like why are we doing this? Like, come on, like you could just reset them at 5. That's where the grind would start there. So I do like that the resets are less severe in this game. It's like, all right, well the real challenge is at Legend, and we shouldn't make people feel bad for trying to get there. But it's still like, if you're playing like really poorly, it's going to just take you a lot longer. My only worry would be that since you can't really fall if you play like even at a 50% win rate, can get to Legend in this system, because if you lose at the right time, you're just in the Serpent and can't go lower. My only concern would be, once the game does get huge, which we all definitely hope it does, if just so many people get to Legend, that Legend has the China server of Hearthstone has 30,000 Legends just on that, which I just find obscene. And if that happens in this game,
and that could be a solution in and of itself. With a lot of players at Legend, that's where it makes the grind difficult.
Yeah.
Once the players getting to Legend, find the easy way, like you said with Hearthstone. Instead of severely resetting them and making them grind. We make it to Legend every month because it's pretty simple to get there. But when all those thousands and thousands of players are in Legend, that's where it gets difficult. You haven't been able to break past 7, and you had a ridiculous win streak.
I was at 4.
So
yeah, I did win 3 at 7 and just stayed at 7.
Yeah, so that could be the challenge there, and I guess that's what I'm looking for. Is where's the challenge if things start to get competitive. So
I think more people are playing Arena right now is really what's going on, because most people are thinking, hey, I don't have all the cards yet, I don't want to jump on the ladder, but what's the best way to get a bunch of packs is to go play the Arena, which is something that they've also brought over a la Hearthstone, and I'm sure other games as well, is that limited, so to speak, where you use a completely different pool of cards that you don't have access to, you don't get to keep them, but you build a deck out of it, and you try to beat up people that did the same exact thing. And I know for me, I don't remember every single name, but I definitely have not run into, I don't think, anyone of the same in the Arena and all the runs that I've gone through, and I just think that that's where the majority of players are right now.
That makes sense. Going back to Hearthstone, that's what I did, the first couple of months that I played. It was just strictly Arena.
Everyone loves Arena.
Because I didn't want to spend money on Hearthstone at the time. I wasn't sure if I was really into it or not, or wanting to, commit to it. So that brings up a good point. That could be what players are doing right now, and probably is.
Yeah, we're in the minority if we spent money on it. And I know Carl and I don't know if you have, Corey, but I spent 3 days on Arena.
Free to play to rank 2. If y'all are listening, free to play so far to rank 2. I'll probably hit Legend in the next couple of days. You definitely don't have to spend money on this game to win, at least right off the bat. They give you a ton. I'm talking a ton of cards. And just all I did was, you go through the store, you get all your cards.
Wait, hold on, Corey. This sounds like good advice for a how to hit Legend on a budget, free-to-play, BetweenTheLanes.net article.
Oh. Well, the article is literally just going to be take all your blue and red cards and stick some equipment on them and just bash the heck out of your opponent.
That's fine. I think people would read that.
There's plenty of decks that are like that, and I welcome people to. I certainly will have an article on that coming out, but other people too. Just throw something together. Even if you don't think it's the best deck, just go out there. There's maybe a 0.5% of people who have almost all the cards and are going to be able to beat you with their big old legendaries. But if you kill them on turn 7 or something like that, they're not going to have time to do that. So
I think we all have similar stories. My rank 12 to 7 was with this derpy purple red deck. It was just thrown together. I was like, I'm going to put all the big cards in a deck and see what happens, and it just kind of didn't lose a game.
Yeah, if you guys are listening, what Corey said is definitely true. This right now is the optimal time to not only download the game, but experiment, because not only does not everyone have the cards, but there's no pressure right now. It's just, people are learning the game. It's out there for us to learn, for us to get into, for us to enjoy it. I'm experimenting with stuff. I was at, top 10 Legend. I lost a few games because I was testing a new deck. I was like, oh god, I'm not going to qualify for prelims. Wait a minute. There's no reason to tilt. I don't care. This is fun. I'm learning the interactions.
Yeah, everyone's in the same boat, which is really nice. Nobody's ahead of anybody else right now.
And learning from each other. I actually played against a guy, and 2 games later, he came back and we played the mirror. He built the same deck probably out of the cards that he had, and he was playing the Tome, the 4-mana blue Tome that gives you +2/+2 and draws you a card. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, maybe I should be playing 1 or 2 of those. So there's a lot of this kind of group learning that's happening right now too, because everyone has their initial card evaluations of these things, and I come from a Magic background where if you're in a constructed tournament, you really don't want to be playing a ton of either equipments or enchantments, they're called in Magic, the items, things that you put on your creature, because if it gets hit with a removal spell, you use 2 cards and they used 1. But I've been convinced otherwise, that I think that they're pretty good in this game. So there's been a number of times that just from watching what other people are doing, I'm learning, and hopefully in playing against them, they're kind of learning too. It's a very, very big learning experience. So that's another recommendation I take, is the people you play against, check out the synergies and things that they're doing that's working for them, and maybe put a spin on it that works for you.
Yep. So we kind of just wait. So like in the future, basically, just to summarize, like if there was gonna be one change to perhaps make the ladder, I'm not gonna say more more difficult.
But more challenging.
I'm gonna say maybe at least like more dynamic, so we don't have like a clump of basically everyone who's played more than like 100 games just automatically at Legend at the end of the month. Like if there was gonna be something to like, I don't know, to diversify when the player base gets kind of gigantic, what would be like the one thing we would change to the ladder? Would we make the serpent sort of thing deeper? Would we just add a few more ranks at the bottom, like maybe to 15 or 20? What would we do? What do you guys think?
I don't hate 15 to 20 ranks, especially if it's not going to follow Hearthstone's, I guess, system where you at the end of a season, like you're at rank legend and you drop all the way to back to the beginning. So like if they can handle that in a decent way, like I wouldn't mind 15 to 20 ranks. But without the bonus and the win streak, I think that's where 12 ranks. I think that's where that comes into play. There's no win streak to get yourself up there real quick. You literally have to grind game by game unless you're getting lucky with the bonus ones every now and then.
Just to clarify, there are like a few more stars at the higher ranks. I don't exactly know how many they are, but I remember 12 had like
6
a couple.
or 7.
Yeah,
I think right now 2 is 6.
Like I said, I was very surprised when I was rank 8 and they just put me at 9. I really thought that was like automatically going to be back to like 12 or maybe like 11 or something. But if I would be okay with like 15 to 20, and if you're a legend you get back to like 8 to 10 or something like halfway point. That's totally reasonable.
Yeah, as far as it is right now, like I don't hate the system. Like I like it a lot. Like Corey said, I'm very positive about it. It seems like a good system, and I don't think Bethesda's going to do anything to make the players riot, So.
Yeah, I like the ladder the way it is right now. To me, it is still very competitive. It is difficult. I mean, I've been sticking around rank 2 or so for a while. I mean, I got up there pretty quickly, but I think other people will find they're able to do that too. So you get to a bit of a bottleneck. At least for me, it doesn't feel like it's just a straight breeze through. I mean, Christian, you actually, you had to grind through a number of games. It's not like you won every single one and got up to legend. So. I like that they do continue to focus on your progress and not, punish you for your failures, which I just think overall is good for a positive game. Because at the end of the day, I mean, they can make it a little bit harder to beat to legend, but like, doesn't everyone want to get to the legend rank? Like, that's what everyone wants to do. Yeah. If 25% of the player base at the end of the year is legend ranked, then I think that's fine, as opposed to the 5% it was, I think, in Hearthstone.
Yeah, and like no matter how no matter how many people get to legend, no matter how you slice that number, at the end of the day, whatever they decide is like the epitome of legend. Like if they do something for top 50 legends, that's going to be 50 people every month. So I mean, there's the competition, right?
Yeah, exactly. It keeps it challenging. That's exactly what I was going to say. No matter how many people are at legend, you still have to. If you want to be the very best, you have to
catch them all.
Have to grind. Yeah, you have to try. You have to work at it. So as long as players are still working at it and they're having a good time, I think that's the perfect. That's what they're looking for. That's what I'm looking for. So I want to have a good time while trying. So
I'm actually jealous for everyone that's probably watching in the chat right now that gets to play and listen to this right now, because I'm looking at my little launcher in the bottom like, oh, maybe I can play while we're doing this too.
Oh, God.
The more we're talking about it, I'm like, oh, now I just want to play.
It's okay, and speaking of the chat, since we can sidebar a little bit, if you do have questions, get them in now. We'll do like a tiny question and answer thing, just the compelling questions at the end. Yeah. And we'll do more podcasts, obviously, in the coming weeks. All right, so since we talked about the ladder, and we sort of touched on the meta, part of the reason it has to be so easy to get to legend right now is because, we did buy cards. We did, we kind of cheated the system if we're assuming that, like, almost all of our opponents are basically free to play and didn't have access to the beta for longer than us, right? So, I mean, not really cheated the system, but we had an advantage. Whereas in I assume even as early as next month, that advantage is going to all but disappear at like rank 5 to legend, right? People are going to be playing whatever is the deck that they think is the best, and they're probably just going to be able to craft the cards they need for it. But on that note, we have seen the meta start to, well, I guess people who've been playing more in the beta before we had access 10 days ago or so would know better, but there have been nerfs and stuff since then that I really can't talk about because I don't know any of them. But we have seen sort of starting, like, the definition, like, the meta is starting to be defined a little bit. Like, we're starting to, through actually playing, at least run into the same decks over and over. And I've seen people copy a couple things that I've posted, and I'm like, it's pretty surreal because I don't think that I've solved the meta at all. Like, I'm still learning what people actually are playing and what cards actually work. But I do want to talk about what we think. Basically, what are our first thoughts about the meta? Is it diverse? What are the best types of decks? Is aggro, control, and mid-range all playable? Are all the colors playable? Like, is the meta looking good, guys? That's really my question. What do we think?
I've always been bad at predicting metas. That's why I've been on teams with you gentlemen, because I think you guys are better at analyzing it. Corey's had a much deeper background in Magic to kind of have ideas like that, and you've always been my deck builder, CVH. But I've always considered myself a pretty good pilot. And as far as like playing what is considered top tier, I can sort of make my way through, and when I know what the cards do, I'm pretty good at games. But I like to think.
Don't.
Right, so from what I've found so far, I've strictly played just that blue-purple madness, like big things deck, and then the Archer mid-range that you crafted and is up on Between the Lanes right now. And I think mid-range is just kind of the I think it's what complements the system that Legends is trying to create with the 2-lane system and the runes and all that. I think mid-range just kind of has the niche, I guess, as far as the gameplay is concerned. Aggro seems okay, but it just seems to peter off. And I think control is just too slow with how big and good the actual mid-range cards are. So I think mid-range is it. I know we talked about this a little bit, before the podcast, but I'm interested to see what Corey actually thinks, because I haven't spoken to him about this.
And for reference, I just did post the deck list. On the left is the deck Carl just referenced, the one I was playing, the Legend, and the right is TVP9's version of the same deck. He's a player who finished Rank 1 Legend with it in July, actually, before I even really got to play the ladder. So basically the same kind of strategy, just different card choices, so you guys can get an idea of what's being played in the deck we're referencing. Your turn, Corey.
I think the meta is wide open right now. I have not been able to I have not seen a deck that I have felt to be unbeatable. I have not created a deck so far, even one that's at least it's a little bit cohesive, that hasn't been able to win. Christian and I threw together kind of that silly aggressive deck before that. You can just that's the thing is with prophecies. There's so many different things that can happen. I think that each side, you've got these big boom booms for the control decks that you can ramp into that can just completely just like wipe out your opponent's whole board if you can get up to 12 mana. You've got some really aggressive low drops with some equipment you can throw on them, and just the word you're going to hear me say a lot is synergy. The decks that are synergistic are the ones that are going to be really good. Like right now, I'm still working on a list for a blue-green shackle deck, just because that mechanic, and with one of them, the 4-mana creature that whenever something becomes shackled, it deals 2 damage. I mean, that's just
Tormentor.
Just a small example of if your deck is synergistic. I think that's going to be where it is that you want to be. They're really, at least to me, I haven't seen a card that has ever been completely unbeatable to me. I mean, I've beat people on turn 5 and turn 6. You can kill people pretty quickly in this game, but you can also get to the late game. And I've had some very, very like back and forth chess games trying to make sure that, oh man, which side does this, which lane does this one need to be in, so I can like. There's so much going on, and I'm seeing a meta coming up. There's red green archer. There's the blue purple ward deck that everyone's pretty high on. I've been playing the white purple tokens deck. There's also a white purple just go big deck, which is pretty great. The orc and the goblins deck, I get beat down by those things all the time just because of how much synergy that they have. But I play against this guy too who has a mono blue deck at Legend, and I get stomped by him every time, except for the last time. I finally figured out what his deck was doing and how I could beat it. So if you want to play a monocolor deck, I mean, go for it. I've run into mono red, mono blue, a mono purple deck, which I wish I knew. I wish I didn't get beat down so quickly because his deck looks sweet, but there's just an endless amount of possibilities right now. The metagame, I'm pretty excited for it because it just seems like people have got their thinking hats on and there's all kinds of stuff coming out right now.
Yeah, and it's important to note, this is still just the first set. Like, the fact that you just said there's endless possibilities, and we literally just have the core set. Like, you don't say that about other games. It's just not something that is said, really. Like, you guys don't really know about Kaijudo, but you guys in the call do. We weren't saying that about that core set, and I'm pretty sure we weren't saying it about Hearthstone's core set either, even though there were 9 classes, so there were a lot of cards. But there's a lot of depth, and I do think to touch on what Carl said about mid-range, like, the reason why it's so good is just because, like, the card pool is, as deep as this set is, it's still pretty small. So the synergies that Corey's talking about, like, more decks will be able to take advantage of more synergies. Obviously, as more cards come out, more are possible, more synergies are actually possible, so decks will take advantage of those, like, dedicated control decks that don't really have to play any mid-game. Like, they might become a thing if their removal options are such that allows that, and the meta develops like that. Aggro, when it gets better aggro cards, we'll be able to focus, more on that. But as of right now, a lot of the decks, like the word control, like the token deck, and like the decks on screen, they just, they have a good curve. And that's basically, that's the basics, right? You just want to be playing good stuff on curve, and you can't really go wrong with that. I'm pretty sure mid-range decks will always be good, but right now they're kind of like, not only the go-to thing because they're kind of cheaper to build, but it's just the basics, right?
Well, that's like what Corey said. I mean, it's beatdown. It's like, I'm gonna summon a really big thing, and there's not a lot of options to deal with those big things. When that happens, you kind of have to throw some guys into it, and be smart about your resources in mid range. Just as a deck in general, I think, or a deck type in general. I shouldn't say deck because there's so many decks, like what Corey said. But as a type of deck, as an archetype, if you will, it does those things the best, and I think complements the system and the base set the best.
The one other thing I'll say about the game that is super interesting is the being ahead on life mechanic. There's a lot of times that you have to think, okay, my opponent has a soul rest marshal probably coming up next turn. I may need to try to figure out my best way. Maybe it doesn't look the best right now, but to make sure my life total is greater than his and he can't have his be better, so then that way he can't drop double soul rest into Jarl on me or something like that. So that's just something that, like, my brain has never thought about, because I'm always about using your life total as a resource, and, like, when you're at 20 and your opponent's at 21, like, it doesn't matter. It's about getting control of the game and understanding how you can get to the end of the game. But if your opponent has one more health than you, they get a bunch of their cards turned on and a bunch of yours are not. So that's just another kind of thing to think of. If you're running into problems against these mid-range decks with Soul Rest and Jarl and things like that, start just going to their face and don't let them get those triggers, and you'll start getting... So, like, that's these sorts of things that I'm just learning, soon on from a couple of games, that's how you can attack those sorts of decks. So at least to me, it feels like everything has its weakness right now. There are a lot of really good strong cards and good strong synergies, so you'll see similar decks, but the core of them will be relatively the same, but a lot of the other stuff outside of it is like, nobody has anything close to that.
We got most of that.
Yeah, the end you got cut off there, Corey. But again, just to again, compliment what Corey was just saying. There are a lot of possibilities. You can run a lot of different cards, within the core of a deck. There's obviously, like, good cards, like the sharpshooter from red that deals 1 damage and is prophecy. Like, that card's really good. You're probably going to see 3 of that in almost everything because you get 3 of them out of the story mode. It's a really good card. But the other just kind of like 20, 30 spots in a deck you can sort of play around with, and like, I think this card's better than the card that this guy's using, and I'm going to try to use this in a different way. There's just a lot of possibility, and it's just the base set, like both of you guys are saying. So I'm interested to see where it goes, and we've still got a whole month before this next reset, and the game is definitely growing from what I'm seeing. So.
And I personally, if they do anything sort of like what Hearthstone does, this could actually support a single deck format pretty well for tournaments. But if they did do something with, like, multiple deck format, it's not only just how you build your decks at that point, it's how you build your lineups. And if the deck construction is this dynamic, then the lineups themselves would look a lot more varied than I think we see in other games. Nudge, nudge. Games that begin
I would
with
like
H.
for this. Yeah, I would like to see this be a 1-deck format, just because in a 50-card deck you have a lot that you can prepare for different matchups.
And there are tech cards, like drop whatever the thing that destroys support cards. That's a basic card, or that's a neutral card. Like, it's cool to have those tech things to use if those things are giving you a problem. You can just run one and it's got decent stats, and it is what it is.
And I legitimately
I've almost had one in almost every deck so far. The more I keep playing that card, I keep popping off all of their potions. Like, sometimes they'll just go, hey, I'm on curve, I don't need to use these till late game, and just jump right on. And that is technically a support card. There's your trick for the day, is any of those that destroy support cards will destroy the what are they, the mana potions? Sorry, I can't remember the
Elixir of Magicka.
Yeah,
it's
Elixir
Magicka, guys.
It's a support.
Magicka. Elixir of Magicka. You're out of there.
So yeah, what was I gonna say about that? I really can't remember what I was going to say about that, but I do want to talk about, since someone in the chat also mentioned this, and we have the Archer deck on screen, obviously it's pretty powerful, and Corey, you did mention the life gain cards. Oh yeah, like also the cards that are attached to runes are kind of like that too, like Burn and Pillage. You know, you're like, oh, he'll attack me, I'm okay with that, I'll get another rune, you know, card advantage is sweet, I'm not going to die. Then all of a sudden Burn and Pillage kills your entire board. So like, all those mechanics, you know, they really make you think a little bit more than sometimes I have been thinking.
Yeah, you know,
Christian,
we didn't have that much, you know, just different kind of card weird effects and, you know, any other game that I played, so.
What did you say, Corey?
How do you feel about breaking your own runes in an aggressive deck to be able to draw some more cards and be able to...
Sometimes you just beat
hit a
Modern
prophecy
Leper.
by accident?
Sometimes that's how you beat Modern Leper. Oh,
Yep.
God. I'm so sorry. So, the Archer deck and these cards that are based on life totals, you have one for each color. It's sort of like a cycle of these cards. Royal Sage, Triumphant Jarl, Soul Rest Marshal, that's this guy. Pretty much universally considered just the best of these 5 cards. 5-drop 4/4, and if you have more health than your opponent when you play it, the next creature you summon this turn costs 6 less. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to say card, but as of right now, this is the picture I found on Google, which I'm just now reading. Either way, card's crazy good.
Yeah.
I think it actually does say card, you guys, in the current version, so this is an old Google, thanks guys, but... Anyway, this card obviously gets out of hand really crazy, and I think, you know, I'm not going to go out on a limb and say I know what should be nerfed after playing the game for 10 days total, but I do think if I was to have to nerf one card right now slightly, it would probably be this card, just based on the fact that it's the only one of this cycle that can stack on itself.
Well, I mean, it's just like what we found, or at least what I found with Soul Rush, because I've been playing this deck very, very actively. I don't know if Corey's taken it on yet, but when you summon, like, especially if you have more than one Soul Rest in your hand, you summon Soul Rest, you summon another one, and then you summon, you know, maybe a Jarl that draws you 2 cards and gets your hand back, and now you have 3 4/4s on the board on turn, I don't know, 5 or 6, you know, whenever, you
or
know,
4.
if you're 4 if you're playing it on
not?
curve. And I don't know of any cards in Legends yet that can deal with all, you know, multiple 4/4s on turn 4 or 5. So it's very good. It's a very, like, it's a swing card. You know, it's every time I've done it, like, it's been insane, and you know that's usually where the game ends because, you know, it's usually over after that. 12 points of damage is a lot to deal with on the next turn if you don't have something already on board, and with the cover lane too, you're just protecting them all. So I think you're right. As far as really good cards in the set go, at least ones we've stumbled on so far, I think this is definitely one of the best.
Yeah,
I have a slightly different opinion of Soul Rest. I believe that it's more of a role player for these types of decks that will actually it starts to allow you to really push the envelope in the mid game if you have had a successful early game. Because again, if you're down in life total, you're just going to play a 5-mana 4/4 if you don't have the higher life total. So you either need to have a pretty good curve to start and hitting your opponent's life total, or you need to be slowing them down in a way. So you have to. It's a little bit of a payoff for winning the early game.
Yeah.
So if you didn't win the early game, and if you can't get yourself in a situation to have your life total be higher, then those things just get clogged in your hand. I've watched it happen to Christian. I've watched it happen to me. You're just sitting there with all these 5s and 6s in your hands, and you're falling behind.
It's
definitely only good when you're ahead, and if you're behind, it's just not that great. So I think that honestly, when it's at its best, it's awesome. It's a backbreaker, but at its worst, it doesn't even have charge. I'll play that 5-mana 4/4 charge. I'd rather have that in my hand.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's no question that, you know, if this card literally, if it always got its effect, obviously, it would just be, you know, we wouldn't even be talking about it. We probably wouldn't even be playing this game at that point, you know? It's like, alright, well, they don't know what they're doing with card design, guys. So, like, they're obviously balancing these cards with, like, sure, the payoff is high, but when you're behind, they're just, you know, average at best. And we see that Royal Sage is probably the best on average when you're behind in life. You know, it's a 4-drop 4/4, but the rest, you know, Golden Saint, I don't want to pay 6 for a 4/4 guard. I don't want to pay 5 for 4/4 for this card, or Blackboard Necromancer, and Jarl's probably one of the worst of them all. You know, it's just a 6-drop 4/4 if you're not getting the 2 cards out of it. But I mean, like, let's take Triumphant Jarl, because it's a card that's also being played in the mid-range deck. It's obviously very good. I don't really hear people saying that it's broken, and I disagree with anyone who does. Like, sure, you know, the payoff is you draw in 2 cards. Reminds me of Ancient of Allure from Hearthstone, which actually was too good because it always got its effect off. That's what we're talking about. So, you know, the payoff's high, like Corey said, and when you're behind, it's going to be very clunky in your hand because it's going to be a card that you just don't want to pay 6 to play. But sometimes you're going to have to, and it's going to be really unpleasant to do. Whereas this card is kind of... like, yeah, it's bad when you're behind, but I think the payoff is exponentially like just so much more than any of the other ones we're talking about. Like even Golden Saint, 6-drop for 2 4/4s with guard. That can't really compare for me paying 5 for 3 4/4s. Like, and it's just the fact that it can stack on itself that I think is only the problem.
To play devil's advocate, and to again draft off what Corey was saying, it's it's a 5 for 4/4. Like on turn 4, like if you know your opponent's playing, the green red deck, or is playing Archer, then you might want to get in there a little bit sooner. And I think what TS Legends does in a good way for cards like this, it's a 50 card deck and you only have 3, so like the odds of it stacking on top of itself like multiple soul rest is low. And then getting if you're trying to ramp up and get there and summon a lot of guys to put on board to get the damage in so that you're ahead in life when you are on 4, 5, or 6 to summon it, are you getting max value by also summoning when that it's a very limited thing to say that I'm always summoning soul rest with a Jarl, or I'm always summoning soul rest and maybe getting a belligerent giant for 1, or another 6-drop for 0. It's very, it's not low, because I want to say I've done it God, so many times, but
yeah, right. It
but
seems like almost planned.
Yeah, it happens often, but again, we're still in the early stages of the game, so it'd be interesting to see how good this card actually stays as people get better at predicting the turns ahead and seeing the soul rest coming, more or less.
If I were to change it, which I would be interested if I were like on the design team, for example, I'd have them like alter the card just for testing purposes, and I would be interested to see what it would be like to test with it. If, for example, it said if you have more health than your opponent, the next creature you summon this turn costs 4 less, I think it would still be okay. That might be a little too harsh. I would be personally okay with just a little bit of extra text that said, except Soul Rush Marshal at the end of it. So, but that would be fine for me personally.
There's just a lot of things you can do. Like, if the card actually does get out of hand, like, even like a 5 for 3/3 Soul Rest that, maybe reduces something by 5, that's, like, there's a lot of options there. Like, it seems like they found a sweet spot, though, with, like, the 5 for 4/4. Like, it's good stats on its own, like if you do just have to run it out as a 4/4, but the 6 is definitely the problem there. So
yeah, like the thing, we can compare this pretty reasonably to Blackboard Necromancer, which is like the purple equivalent. I don't have the picture, but same card, except when you play it and you hit on life, you get a random creature from your discard pile, comes to the board, get the summon effect and everything. The difference is, obviously green is better at staying ahead, because most mid-range decks do play green instead of purple. But, the Black Worm, it's very rarely going to stack on itself. Like, if you have another Black Worm in the discard pile, first of all, it's way past turn 5 at that point. Second of all, there's RNG attached to the effect. It's like you're probably going to get something value sometimes, but you're almost never just going to be able to plan out this insane, I'm going to get 3 dudes on board this turn and only pay 5 magicka for it,
Yeah, don't play that card in your tokens deck, because you'll get a 1/1 wolf or a 1/1 soldier out of it every single time, because when those things die, they actually go to your graveyard too. Don't play that PSA in your tokens deck. I thought it was going to be sweet. I'm like, oh yeah, it'll just get back my token producers and things.
You think if there was a deck for it, that it would be that deck, but it's just not.
Yeah,
and that's really, I think Soul Rest Marshal's just undisputed. Jarl's great, Golden Saint's great. A lot of them are great, but this one is just the best of the cycle. And if there is, maybe it gets touched in the future, but I think the deck, while great, probably just tier 1. I think that there are other tier 1 decks that have yet to be discovered yet, partially due to people playing not as much as they will be in the future, less players who are competitive. As soon as we see a competitive scene and more players get into the game with card pools, we're going to see a lot of decks that can really compete. And I think that's going to be the most interesting part of this whole situation.
Overall, if you're having problems with this card, play a little bit more aggressive and just try to figure out what turn it looks like your opponent's going to try to play that one, and just make sure that there's no way they can have more health than you.
Yeah, for right now, we obviously can't nerf the cards, so if you're going to be playing this game and you see the decks that were just on screen, this card is something to watch out for. Mind the life, guys. Mind the life.
Yep. So closing topics.
With that being said, I think we kind of got... Oh, wait, so anything else sweet on the ladder while I go look in chat for things to answer? Because we can do a quick Q&A at the end, if anyone had any compelling questions. Also, if you didn't post a question but you have one, get it in now. Maybe we'll answer it. So anything else you guys think are sweet on the ladder? Yeah, I know you like the token deck. Carl, what have you been... Oh, how are you guys doing on the ladder, by the way? Let me know. I haven't...
sitting at rank 2 at like 3 or 4 stars right now. Only got to where I got, 2 nights ago. I don't have a lot of time to play as much as I want to. I'm hoping to more next week, but yeah, I've been having fun with it. I've only spent maybe, I'd venture to say, less than 20 hours playing the game since we got the beta keys like 2 weeks ago, so like a week and a half ago, however long ago it was. So maybe like 20-ish hours playing the game, and played a lot of arena, and then the reset, and then at rank 2 currently. So I've also spent money on the game though.
Yep, rank 2, free to play. So again, everyone out there, if you're worried about getting mixed up with all these people that are paying money and got all this cash just coming out their ears, first of all, never feel bad about spending money on a game like this. If you think Bethesda did a good job, go for it. Pokemon Go, I threw $20 at them. I thought it was a good game, but I wanted to try to go free to play as much as possible to kind of prove to people I haven't spent a dime on it. I've just gone on, and whenever I have money or enough of the coins, I go do an arena, get some more packs, and I've just been building up my collection. None of my decks are top tier really, but you've got a lot of the staples that are in there, and
I think top tier is a is a word that should be
loose
used
term.
loosely. Yeah,
yeah,
it's more like optimizing your deck, I think, as well.
Absolutely, I'd say focus on synergies in your deck as much as possible. I mean, the yellow purple tokens deck. I mean, you can probably craft that for like 4,000.
Yeah, I was able to. I was able to build it without actually having to craft anything after the. It was the first deck I put together, and I was able to craft it. Like I was missing some of like the token getter, like some of the big cards, but I had almost all the it's mostly common. It's mostly common and rare, so very easy to craft if you're looking for something good to play. Mm-hmm. Divine Fervor is the only one that's like really worth getting if you want to play the deck.
Don't they give you one of those to like upgrade anyway?
You do. You get one very early, and then I wound up getting another one out of some arena packs later on. So I was like, oh, cool.
You get some sweet power cards just from playing and upgrading. So I would just say, just keep on trucking through there, and you'll start getting better cards and focus on synergies. That's kind of my overall suggestion.
It's very true. So.
All right, so we found the questions. I had to scroll up a bit. Let's see what we're going to answer first. Hit Girl asks, what is the best single color deck in your guys' opinion? Is there a viable one? Corey, I think you probably have the only reasonable answer to this, since you're probably the only one who's seen one.
Honestly, I think there's probably... I haven't explored them all enough. I've definitely seen the mono red one, which is... I mean, if you hear the words mono red and you play any sort of card game, you've probably got a general idea. It's just very much beat down... some big guys, some charging guys that are getting out there really quickly and beating your face down. That mono blue deck is something else too. Blue's got a lot of removal and a lot of sweet late game things. So
that Riyadh Horseman can hit you for 10 damage on turn 3. It's insane. Or 2 if you have the potion. Like that's just
Green you can do solo too if you either want to be a goblins deck or even just like the mono green mid-range deck. Like the green's got a lot of really good colors or really good cards in that color.
So many colors come together to create this shirt.
I'm just skipping words. But I would say absolutely go for it. I've seen somebody who made a mono neutral deck.
Oh wow.
Oh, I did lose to that.
Isn't that pretty bonkers? You get a dwarven, whatever it's called, and they put the 5/5 equipment on it, and they get a gold brand, and they start just pinging out your guys.
Start getting beat down by Team Mudcrab and Team Portcullis.
No, they were good neutral cards.
Oh.
there might have been a Portcullis in this deck that I played against.
Alright, this is a quick question I can answer. Would I ask, will you pull on guests on this in the future? Yes, I will. I plan on doing this regularly, but I don't know exactly how regularly. So, I mean, we'll see, first of all, what there is to talk about, but I will be diversifying the people, maybe more than 3. I don't know, I like 3, but, I have people I already want to ask to be a part of this, so multiple opinions is always just the nuts for the stuff like this. Head Fanatic asks, I cringe at this question because it, kind of triggers me. Hearthstone has Tavern Brawl. Do you want some kind of game mode that mixes up the game every week? I personally didn't. I like Tavern Brawl just gets on my bad side because for the longest time I and so many people in Hearthstone were hoping for a tournament mode, and I think honestly, with the fact that they already have solo and versus arena, and in solo mode the lanes are mixed up, like it really does change the way the game is played. If they expand upon that, but like that's fine. But I think the mode that I would want to see in addition to versus, casual, and arenas would just be a tournament mode, honestly. Just, that would be what I would want in the future. I know it won't happen anytime soon, but when something is added, I feel like it should just be that.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. Tavern Brawl just seems like solo arena, really. Like if you want to play something derpy, but I don't think and I don't know this because I
And
don't know
derpy's
like
probably offensive, but it's fine.
yeah. Well, again I don't know the lore of Legends and the Elder Scrolls, but like it just seems like something that wouldn't support something goofy like that. There are the lanes that kind of encompass like the different game modes that I guess Skyrim and the Elder Scrolls would have like I guess done in their games. So I think that's like the extent. I wouldn't be surprised if we never see a Tavern Brawl. I personally probably it doesn't matter to me if it happens or not because I have no connection to the lore of it all. But I just don't think it's something that would behoove them to do.
Yep. Alright, so the next question I think we basically already answered, but if you weren't here for the answer, the question was, what are your thoughts on the aesthetic presentation of the game? How important is it? This is a lot of questions in one, but I'll give you a pass this time. Some, including myself, worry it will never gain the player base it needs if people don't like the look of it. Well, that's definitely a valid concern, because if something is just, BF ugly, that's just something people will probably avoid. Like, if this game legitimately just looked bad, I think we can all agree that it doesn't look bad, it just looks different from what we may be used to if we come from certain other card games that are also online. And this is actually a problem I had with Duelist in particular, because the pixel art was very cool to me, but it was also just kind of hard to see what was going on. This isn't something that I experienced in this game, but I get like the sort of darker, more serious, sort of like Corey's webcam right now, it's darker and more serious. Like, it might just make you a little uncomfortable if you're used to looking at, the other webcams on the screen.
I'm just saying, we've been on the worst part of the art train as far as Kaijudo was concerned. That art was just something.
I think the worst part about that art was that a lot of it was really good. Like, so they had a lot of Magic the Gathering artists come in, but then they also had just really bad art to complement, and it was sort of disjointed, and it didn't feel like a universe.
Right.
It felt like
exactly. It felt like a cartoon that nobody watched.
Yeah, it felt like watching a cartoon and also watching a documentary. Like, they're just, I don't want to, at the same time, it's just weird, I don't feel connected to it.
Like, you guys know the show Drawn Together, right?
Yes.
No.
Sort of like that, where it's just, there's these different characters, they're drawn from these different places, it doesn't really seem like they're kind of all together. Some of them are cool, and some of them you're just like, why is...
You're just upset whenever they get screen time, yeah. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I basically think it's fine. People complain about the polish, but I think they're just used to something that's more in your face, like Hearthstone. Hearthstone, like, I really like the game design, but let's be honest with ourselves, it's not as deep. It's kind of a simple game, so they have to make up for it with like showmanship, right?
Yeah, you're right. Legends is definitely speaking to the player who wants to play a game. It's not really focused on the art or like the big pop or the wow. It's like the gameplay is really rich, and I think that's where their focus is. I like the art personally.
I think it's really good. Like, I'm not gonna say it's not good.
Yeah,
it's good.
I like it a lot. I don't know anything about the lore. I've said this countless times, but I like the way the game looks and I like the way the game plays. So they get 2 thumbs up from me. So
And I think they'll obviously fix whatever glitches appear. I really haven't found but that one glitch where there was an item attached in HTML code. Honestly, Hearthstone just has more glitches. That's just a bona fide fact. You can if you just play a bunch of tournaments and stuff like I have in Hearthstone, you will immediately get frustrated. There are things that just impact your experience, and I haven't found that in this game yet. Obviously, they will appear. I feel like they'll be if they are addressed. I think just the semi-darker appearance of it, I don't think it will do anything negative, and the reason is because it has to be different, right? And you can't really get more wacky than like Hearthstone's really trying to be wacky, and so this game just takes a slightly different approach, uses the lore that it already has able to be built on, and I think it's probably fine. I think people will come around to it. I think there's a lot of negativity from people who've played the Elder Scrolls games themselves because they just don't want a card game, but I mean, I'm sure that happened in Hearthstone too, and I think overall, if the card players really get into it and show that it's a good game, I think it'll be fine. Honestly, I honestly like the graphics. So I found one compelling question
This is our last one.
I think this is the last one. And it was a simple question, but I think we can expand on it in the way that I kind of did want to talk about, but I forgot about it until just now. And it is by to Chancel's, should the starting hand size be larger than 3? And what I want to tie into this is the fact that when you're going second, you don't get an extra card, like virtually almost every single game out there. I think Pokemon's the only one that I know that you start at the same cards, right, and you draw at the beginning of your turn. But like basically the second player, the person who's technically, quote, on the draw, isn't really on the draw, since both players have the same amount of cards to start with, and instead we have the Elixir, which has 3 charges to gain additional mana. What are our thoughts on that? Like, what about the hand size versus the Elixir? Is it a good balance? Is there like an advantage? Like, is this good? Someone?
Corey, yeah, I don't.
It's hard to say if it's good or bad because I think the Elixir, the fact that they give you 3 of them, I think that kind of becomes a full card enough to me of being on the draw. I haven't noticed enough of being on the play or on the draw, whichever one is worse or better. Like I just haven't gotten to the point of saying that, oh, I love being in the draw or I hate being in the draw. I mean, the coin was great in Hearthstone. I almost always wanted to have the coin. There are very few times I wanted to be on the play, but being able to get your first guy down and then next, your next turn, your opponent gets to put down a 2-drop, and you're putting your 2-drop. They get a point. They get a certain window to be able to catch up, so to speak. And I think that they've done a good enough job on that. I might want to say like maybe the Elixir should only be 2, but it's somewhere in there. They're really close on it. I haven't seen one way or another of saying that either going first or going second is better or worse. I actually like having the smaller number of cards. I think 3 is actually probably perfect too. It lets you kind of shape your hand a little bit, and it's less about getting the perfect hand every single time, because if you have 4 or 5 cards, you can just keep shipping everything and hoping you're getting your absolutely perfect hand. It's more about building your deck to be able to possibly come back if you don't have a really great start.
Yeah, it's important to note that 3 cards in this game is not the same as 3 cards in Hearthstone, because your decks are 20 cards bigger.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you can run additional copies of things, but, that doesn't really apply to every card like unique legendaries. So I think the 3 cards does make you have to be very cognizant when you're deck building, and you have to say, alright, well, this is my optimal curve. This would be great, but we can't reasonably expect this every time. We can't reasonably expect to see this on turn 1 followed by this on turn 2. It's probably pretty rare, even if we, hard mulligan for it. So we have to have a lot of plans.
Yeah, and I agree with both of you, like, wholeheartedly. Like, the 3-card hand limit, or in the beginning, is perfect. I don't see any problem with that. And Corey brings up a good point too. Like, the Elixir of Magicka, if you're going second, kind of makes up as that extra card. Now you've got 3 turns where you could possibly use it. And there's been multiple games where I've been on on I guess going second. It's I can't say on the draw because that doesn't make any sense.
On the potion.
On the potion, yeah. There's been multiple times where I've been on the potion and I haven't used it. There's been like, I'll go all the way to turn like 7 or 8 before I use it, and then I'm like, oh well, I don't really even have to at this point. And then
you start thinking, oh, could I have used this better?
Right, and it's a support card too, so like there's ways to destroy it and manage it. So it's just I think they've done a good job in balancing it. And as far as this base set is concerned, I don't think there's any sort of repercussion for going second or first, or I think it's very balanced.
It's worth noting that in Hearthstone, even though the coin does seem better for a lot of decks, the fact of the matter is, when you have like a couple thousand games tracked, it's very close 50-50 either way. And I think going first even has like a point something percentage, but it's very negligible. And in this game, I would assume it's the same. The thing about the coin in Hearthstone is that it's inherently positive, right? So, I mean, like, some decks just want it, and that's a problem. That adds a level of RNG to the game, whereas some decks really want the coin. Like Miracle Rogue always wants the coin every single time.
It's a spell.
And
it counts as a spell. It's an actual card they give you. So you start up 2 cards on the draw.
If you track your Miracle Rogue rates over 1,000 games, not just everything, but if you just track Miracle Rogue, you will be substantially higher on the coin. It might just be like 4 or 5%, but that's a huge difference. Yeah. And that's a problem when you add that level of RNG. Just, oh, well, now all of a sudden we have this big problem for this class. And same with Tempo Mage, and that's an issue. Whereas the Elixir is inherently, like, it's an advantage, but it's never strictly positive. Like, there's nothing that punishes you for having the coin. Like, almost nothing interacted with spells in Hearthstone. There's no discards out of your opponent's hand. It's just going to be positive for them, a net positive, even though they're going second, right? The Elixir, yeah, it's a positive, but you can interact with this all of a sudden. Like Carl said, you can play Ferocious Drag or whatever that card's name is called, or anything that destroys the support, it'll destroy it. And, it's not, like, strictly making anything better. I suppose if there's a dude that comes into play and gets a buff if you have a support, maybe we'll see that down the line, but since the Elixir exists, I'm sure they'll design around it, and if it is a support, but right now there's nothing that means that, like, you're never too upset if you don't have the Elixir, You're like, alright, sweet, I have the initiative, and I get to play the first thing more than likely, or at least I'll be using his Elixir, and I get to interact with it. It's not that bad. I think it's fine.
Yeah, that's a good question. I like that one.
And even if the Elixir does give your opponent like some good plays, you have the knowledge of, well, we were on the same amount of cards, right? So it's not like they got an extra card and the elixir, whereas in Hearthstone they got the extra card and the coin. That's a lot of value, right?
Who asked that question?
The original question, the question about the starting hand size larger than 3 was Chancels. So basically, I think we're on the impression that the hand size is pretty good. I almost said hand sanitizer.
Also good.
Christian, where can these fine folks find the recording of this afterwards if they may have missed the beginning?
Yeah, I know a lot of people just showed up near the middle of it. Check the links down below. My YouTube channel will be linked. I will be posting the video itself on the YouTube channel because there was some sweet imagery going on the actual stream itself, so you'll be able to see and hear everything, or you can just listen to it in the background if you're into that too. I'll also talk to Corey after this and see if we can post it somewhere else. Stay tuned to my Twitter if I happen to post it on somewhere like SoundCloud or Podomatic or whatever, but more than likely YouTube and the VOD will be the two ways to watch this back. Also, what were you gonna say? Go for it. No, you go.
No, I was just gonna plug your site if you weren't.
Oh, I mean, we could both do it.
Yeah.
Check out together now.
Like everyone together now.
All right, but seriously though, BetweenTheLanes.net. This is sponsored by us, so I mean we're doing this.
Yeah.
There's articles posted, getting even more regularly now. I'll have some guest articles coming up. I have a few lined up actually that I'm excited about. Also ties into the YouTube channel down below and the Twitter at BTL_legends to know when streams are happening, when videos are up, when articles are up, and when the next podcast will be. Like I said earlier, we'll mix up the guests and get a lot of opinions on this. We're trying to have some good discussions. Hopefully we have a lot more to talk about on the next one as well.
Yeah, and I was gonna. Oh, sorry.
No, I'm just talking because I didn't think you had something to say.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if you're really interested in what we have to say, if you enjoyed this podcast and you're into Christian or CVH, if you will, you're into listening to what we have to say, follow him on his Twitter. He's very active on his Twitter. It's at IamCVH. And that's probably the best way to interact with him currently that I've found as far as social media is concerned. We do have Between the Lanes set up on Facebook. We do have the website. It has its own Twitter. But if you really want to get in touch with Christian, if you have questions, if you want to get all the information that we're kind of spewing out about Legends, his Twitter is the place to go.
Yeah. For personal inquiries, there's also a contact on BetweenTheLanes.net if you really wanted to say something privately. But yeah. Hopefully you enjoyed this first episode of Between the Lanes, the podcast about competitive The Elder Scrolls Legends gameplay, because I just wanted to make the title as long as possible, with this huge, but if you enjoyed this, be sure to leave a follow. We'll be doing this more often. Glad to have you, and stay tuned for future streams, guys. From all of us here at Between the Lanes, the podcast, we'll see you next time.
Later.